is here to start us off in a good way this afternoon. So, Crystal, I'll hand off to you.
Thank you, Candace. Appreciate it. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Krista Allen. I'm your Vice President for Quality Safety Experience Research, and I'm also the Chief Nursing and Allied Health Officer. And thank you very much for having me. I know we have a fantastic afternoon with you planned out. And before we all jump into business, I'm just going to ask each and every one of you to just plant your feet firmly on the ground in which you're calling in on. I'm going to acknowledge with gratitude that I am joining you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and recognize that all of you are coming from various parts of Vancouver Island, where the Coast Salish, Nuu-chah-nulth, and Kwakwaka'wakw families have taken care of this land and stewarded the land resources for all times. And please reflect on the area that you're calling in from. And as we talk about the territory in which we are calling in from, I am thoughtful about the history of this land, what it once was, the vibrant villages of nations that stewarded this land, that fished and hunted and took care of this land, and the significant impacts of colonialization and of residential schools, and of the Indian hospitals, one in which is in Nanaimo and has history there, and the impacts of colonialization on the population. And then I think about our role in each of you, and that we understand the history and the impacts, and we do everything that we can as leaders in our system to try to create a safer place for people to access care. I want people to feel that they can come to us for care and not be scared about what might happen to them. I want people to get the services that they deserve to get when they're in need. People that are vulnerable, I want them to feel that we're caring for them and that we care about them and we're helping them. And you have a critical role in that. And I think that if all of us commit as strongly as we can to our commitment around addressing racism, creating safer access, the rights of Indigenous people, if each of us lean in, we are the ones who are going to be changing our future, and the future for First Nations communities accessing services. So I take this weight heavily on me each and every day when I walk on this land gently, because it's not my land. I occupy space here, and I have an accountability as I live here, to the nations that have lived here for all time. So please just acknowledge the territory where you're calling in from, and reflect a bit on that. I know that we have a huge agenda for this afternoon, but I'm so excited because when I first started here in this role 4 years ago, some of the first people I talked to were the educators, and how passionate our educators are about the work that they do, the challenges that you face each and every day. The work that needs to get done. It was always like, we know what needs to get done. We just have all these barriers in front of us. And so I looked at the agenda this afternoon that Candace and group have kind of made, and I'm just excited because what we have you who are experts. You're out there directly interfacing with care, our patients, our staff. You also hold a leadership role in our organization to help us transform and do the right thing, and quality improvement and safety. And so I just am so appreciative of all you joining. There's 143 people here. I'm so excited. um, because we need to hear from you. And the challenge that I put out to you is, I know we can think about all the things that are impacting us about our ability to do our work. This afternoon, we're asking you to be leaders and help us figure out and problem solve a way to a future where we can start addressing those barriers, we can be solution focused, and we can actually be more progressive. I want this educator group informing our organizational priorities, our clinical priorities for our organization. We need your voice. We're creating a forum for you. And this is, Candace, you've had these sessions periodically throughout the island and stuff. This is not one and done. We're going to be bringing this network together. It's so critical, but I think there's nothing that we can't do with uh, with with you, and there's nothing that we should do without you. So we need you. We need your expertise, and I just am so grateful for each and every one of you and the hard lifting that you do every single day. And just I'm proud to work alongside of each of you. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Candace. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Krista. And when I see the numbers, I get nerve sighted. Have you ever heard that term? Nervous and excited all at the same time. I'll hand over to Cindy Elliott next, please.
Thank you, Candace. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you, Krista. I also am very excited about this session this afternoon. We're over 150 people now, and I think this speaks to the importance of the topic and how invested all of us are. I just wanted to say thank you for coming. I wanted to say thank you to the team who's put together today. We've got a really great session planned. I want to share that this is part of I'm sorry, let me go back a little bit. I'm the Executive Director of Professional Practice and Learning, for those of you I haven't met. And the conversation we're having today is part of our broad portfolio's work toward doing regional support, standardized work to support all of our teams and all of the people we care for across this region. So working together, we are going to be able to support one another and harness our collective strengths. I really just wanted to say thank you to everyone here, and a big thanks to the team who's put today together. So with that, I'll pass it over to Erin before we get going with our day. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is a two hard acts to follow. I don't know if I really need to fill in any gaps here. I just wanted to share my gratitude for everyone who's here today. I'm calling in from the unceded traditional lands of the Comox First Nations. And I want to share that this forum today is for our educators, and the folks who are presenting the work that's being done for the educator community. So work that you might not necessarily have a good pulse on, that our clinical support teams, Chris Allen's portfolio, works on day after day. We want to share and showcase some of that work so that we're getting it to the front line, so we have a good overall picture of, I think, what we've worked on so far. And we're excited to highlight and invite you to all the work that's in sessions and community of practice and ways in which we're going to be working in the future. And we have that coming up too. So I'm going to hand it over to Candace. I don't want to take up any more time, but thank you all for coming.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for getting us started this afternoon. Hopefully I did the right job of sharing my screen with you. So what are we going to be chatting about today? Well, for folks that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm Candace Chapman. I am one of the managers on Erin's team, and I have the pleasure of leading the clinical learning capacity stream team. And I'll be hosting today and doing my darndest to keep us on time and on schedule. So what we will be chatting with you folks about today is, I'm super excited about this one, our regional clinical education program. And our two first ever regional clinical educators to join our team, Megan Schultz and Shauna Downey, will be presenting some insights on that new program alongside another one of our colleagues, Mike Kasprick, who's an operations consultant in our team. as well as Lane Gleason, who is a fourth year BSN student at North Island College who's been doing his leadership practicum with our team. And then next up, you're going to hear from me again, and I'm going to share some updates about our Clinical Educator Pathway program, how our pilot is going so far, what's next with that. Then I'll be handing off to Sonia Rinsma, manager with Practice Learning and Simulation, to share some updates on work underway for standardizing specialty practice and sponsored education approaches in our organization. And after that, we will have Darren Abbey, Director of Practice Learning and Simulation. Did you catch that? It might be a new title that you're hearing right now. More on that to come. As well as Erin Bergen, Director of Clicks, to share about how we are now integrating and collaborating with folks across our organization through the Clinical Education Cross Continuum Committee. Then we will also have a couple of our partners joining us in a little bit. They're not on the call yet, but they promise they're coming. Sarah Sheridan and Sarah Mabbitt are going to be joining us to share a little bit about some of the work that they have underway around the education support for eye health, both implementations and ongoing support for locations that have activated. And then to do our best to try and keep us on track and on schedule, I'm going to get folks to pop their questions along the way into Slido so that we'll move from presentation to presentation, staying on time, but giving you a spot to pop those questions so that you don't forget them along the way. And then we'll take a pause to go through those questions and answer as many of those as we can in the moment. And if not, we will take some away for some homework. And lastly, we're going to finish off with sharing some of the insights that we gained through the recent survey that we sent out to clinical educators through Checkbox to gather insights about what are some of the current challenges and opportunities that we need to explore together. So I mentioned Slido. You can either use the QR code on the screen that I'm showing right now, or you can go to slido.com and enter that event number, or option number 3. There's a link in the chat that you can follow as well. So that's how we are going to be spending our time together this afternoon. And we are recording this session, so if conflicts arise that you need to attend to, we understand. We'll be sharing out the recording within the next week or so, likely posted to our YouTube channel so that it's easy for everybody to access. Great. So I am going to stop presenting and hand off the mic to Megan, Shauna, Mike, and Lane.
All right, welcome and thank you so much for being here. Just going to do a couple quick little tips. Okay. So hello, my name is Megan Schultz. I'm one of the new regional clinical educators, and my pronouns are she, her. And I've met many of you, but I'm looking forward to connecting at least once with everyone. Today, I am presenting from the unceded traditional territory of the Lekwungen people, known today as the Esquimalt and Songhees nations, and the Wasanic peoples, represented by the Sartlip, the Paquichin, the Sayout, the Sekum, and the Malahat nations. Co-presenting with me today are Mike Kasprick, Operations Consultant, Shauna Downey, Regional Clinical Educator, and Lane Gleason, fourth year UVic nursing student. We're going to be sharing more about the new Regional Clinical Education Program, or RCEP for short. We are very excited to share the culmination of many years of diligent work that we believe will have a positive impact on the clinical educator community, and by extension, the health of our organization and the communities we both serve and are a part of. Let's start with a bit of background on how we got here. First, a definition. Clinical educators is an umbrella term used to encompass a vast number of positions and job descriptions under BC Nurses Union and Health Sciences Professionals Bargaining Association that have education as a primary responsibility of their role. Our organization's ability to provide safe, quality care relies on effective, ongoing workplace learning, and clinical educators are critical enablers of fostering quality learning environments for our care teams. So, to assess the current state of clinical education and educators within Island Health, an external consultant was hired as part of the Health Human Resources strategy. The goal was to identify areas where Island Health could improve the experience of staff, reduce turnover, and ultimately improve patient safety and care. The Clinical Educator Optimization Report and recommendations were completed in early 2023. Key findings of the report included that clinical educators have varied practices and often work in silos, leading to differences in educational resources, workflows, and access to learning tools. There's limited standardization across the organization, and clinical educators have inconsistent access to supports depending on where they work. Clinical educators are also working within the context of current and ongoing challenges of the healthcare system, including the experience complexity gap, poor retention and workflow shortages, staff burnout, the drug poisoning crisis, COVID-19, increased violence in the workplace, ongoing changes to care processes, and the evolution of healthcare knowledge and skills required. The report highlighted the need for a cohesive regional approach to supporting clinical educators within Island Health, and thus the Regional Clinical Education Program was born.
So let's start with the basics. What is RCEP? RCEP is an exciting new program designed to expand and enhance how we approach clinical education across Island Health. So what makes RCEP different? The program builds on existing foundation of CLICSys services by extending our support into two critical areas, implementation and standardization. Traditionally, CLICS has focused on supporting clinical educators with the how of delivering education. So this includes things like learning bursts, workshops, online tools, and consultations. And while that support remains essential, RCEP takes it a step further by addressing the what. With RCEP, we can provide guidance on the specific clinical content and initiatives that should be implemented. This shift allows us not only to help educators design high-quality education programs, but also ensure they are implemented effectively, aligned with best practices, and are supportive of our organizational goals. So in short, RCEP transforms how we approach clinical learning, enabling us to deliver more comprehensive and impactful education programs that meet the diverse needs of our teams and ultimately our patients. So RCEP has three main objectives. The first being modernizing and realigning clinical education. The second is providing direct support to educators. And third, facilitating implementation of educational initiatives. RCEP ultimately aims to create a more integrated, standardized, and effective approach to clinical education across Island Health, while ensuring clinical educators receive the guidance they need to thrive in their roles. So to actualize the objectives from the previous slide, RCEP is currently focusing on four main pillars, which includes a community practice that will be connecting educators across Island Health to share best practices and address common challenges faced. From the COP, a working group will be formed called the Clinical Educators Network Council. This council will take ideas generated from the COP and turn them into actionable items. Furthermore, we'll be opening up an intake system Island Health-wide for standardization implementation requests, as well as implementation support for regional education initiatives. And to ensure efficiency and focus, we'll be utilizing a prioritization matrix to evaluate and rank these requests based on factors such as organizational priority, impact on patient care, impact on educators, and impact on region. This approach will help us strategically address the most impactful initiatives first. And lastly, the educator's pathway. This is an exciting new multi-level educator support curriculum created to solidify skills and create an ongoing educator development environment. So at this point, you might be confused on the difference between the Community Practice and the Clinical Educators Network Council. So here's a quick overview. The meetings differ in two main ways. The first being inclusivity versus focused representation. The COP includes all educators, encouraging broad participation and open discussions, where the Clinical Educators Network Council is a smaller working group with a regional representation, providing a more focused and strategic approach. They also differ in their purpose. The COP focuses on discussing challenges and opportunities, creating space to surface ideas and issues, while the Clinical Educators Network Council takes these discussions further by developing actionable plans to address the challenges and opportunities that were identified in the COP. So together, these groups ensure a balanced approach to collaboration, combining inclusivity with targeted action. Next, Lane Gleason, a fourth-year student with Aaron Bergen, will go into further detail about the Clinical Educators Network Council.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. So to echo what Mike was saying, the Clinical Educator Network Council is a newly launched initiative that's aimed at supporting clinical educators across Island Health. It was recommended by results from the Clinical Education Optimization Report, and ultimately it aims to address key areas for improvement in clinical education. So by forming a council of 25 educators, each representing a unique perspective and background, the main goal of this initiative is to have like-minded individuals to come together and create actionable solutions and provide a space to share any challenges and best practices they have related to clinical education. On to the next slide. So the CNC will be a unique platform to impact clinical education. Through this council, members will help shape Island Health's clinical education procedures, collaborate on solutions for any regional education gaps, advocate for local needs, and contribute to a work environment that fosters that professional growth and enacts positive change. So the goal is by partnering together, the CENC members can actively contribute to the creation of practical solutions that will lead to improved education across the island. And kind of the what it is, so commitment and participation from members will definitely help this initiative succeed. The plan for meeting frequency will be every 2 months, and it'll alternate with the COP meetings using Microsoft Teams to accommodate everyone regardless of their location. And between meetings, we'll rely on collaborative tools to continue the conversations, share resources, and keep that progress moving forward, whether that's SharePoint, Teams, Jira, shared docs. And ultimately, the goal of these meetings is to filter out ideas from the community of practice meetings and collectively work together to find ways to work on these initiatives as a team.
We also thought it was important to understand what falls outside of the scope of RCEP. Following are 5 main areas that are considered out of scope. The first being providing support to non-clinical trainers or educators. RCEP's focus is on clinical education, so we don't extend support to non-clinical roles. The second being facilitating training for clinical staff in location services or programs without a designated educator. While we aim to strengthen clinical education broadly, the program does not cover direct facilitation for areas without dedicated educators in place. Third is implementation of non-clinical regional education initiatives or those supported by teams with domain expertise. So for example, initiatives like medication safety, which already has a specialized team, would fall outside our responsibilities. Fourth is providing individualized professional development. Our role is to support broader clinical education initiatives, not to focus on individual professional development plans. And the fifth is participating in performance management or learning contracts. RCEP does not engage in performance management processes for educators or staff, including managing learning contracts. So by clearly defining what is out of scope, we can remain focused on our core mission and responsibilities within the program.
Now you're probably thinking, that's a lot of work that needs to be done. To support this work, 6 regional educators have been hired. And all of these educators will be working together to support the RCEP and other regional initiatives. And in no particular order, and just as a point of information, each of these educators are currently being onboarded, and they're in varying stages of orientation within the CLICS team. And as I call your name, if you're present in the meeting, feel free to give a wave as your name is called. So 3 allied health educators, we have Tara Mackesdocker, Jen Lawless, and Catherine Houlihan. The nurse educators are Megan Schultz, myself, Shauna Downey, and Valerie Firminger.
Thank you for listening. Please add your questions to the Slido and we'll answer during the question period. If you do have questions after the forum, please reach out to the Clinical Learning and Knowledge Services team, and the email is on the right side of the slide. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, folks. And I am so thrilled that I saw all of the new regional educators pop on the line today, just acknowledging that a couple of them haven't even started with our team yet, but they made the time to come and join us today. And I'm really happy about that. And hey, kudos, we are on schedule, team. Way to go. We're doing great. And I popped the link again to the Slido into the chat. If you have any questions from Megan, Shauna, Mike, and Lane's presentation. So I am gonna keep my hand on the mic here and present my screen and share some updates about our Educator Pathway Program. Yes, I want to present. Here we go. Okay. So my teammates gave some fabulous context around some of the clinical education optimization report initiatives that we're aiming to touch on. And the Educator Pathway Program is one of the many components that's come out of that recommendation. And in our HHRS initiatives of supporting clinical educator development, we are adding to our repertoire of support from CLICS for clinical educators this new component of the Educator Pathway. And that is building on top of some of the other learning opportunities and resources we were already providing, but adding this new structured component with a hope and an intention of creating a bit more level setting for folks who are in clinical education roles across the island so that everybody has equal opportunity to be supported in building the necessary skills and abilities to be successful in a clinical education role. There are 2 other pieces of our development strategy as well, which I feel like are unsung heroes. Our onboarding program, which we launched in June, and also our self-assessment tool, which is currently being hosted in REDCap. So that's a little bit about how that fits into our other components of support. A little bit more about the program itself. What is it? How are we running it? So our Educator Pathway Program is based on the experience of our colleagues over in Vancouver Coastal Health Authority and Fraser Health Authority, who have been running an Educator Pathway Program for almost 2 decades now. They have very kindly agreed to share their resources and insights with us to build off of and develop our own program unique to Island Health, which we're customizing to meet the unique needs of our organization. The goal, like I said again a moment ago, is to really ensure that we are offering more consistent and evidence-informed support to clinical educators to develop the necessary skills to be effective in their roles, since you are so critical in enabling really safe, quality patient care. It's important that you feel effective and confident in your roles. So it is a 4-level program. And it is a scaffolded approach where we introduce you to some topics and take you deeper and deeper with each level, increasing in complexity and depth of content covered. So what we are rolling out in Island Health right now is our pilot. We want to see if what we are doing is effective and going to accomplish what we're hoping to in the organization. So in our pilot, we are offering our onboarding program, level 1 of Educator Pathway, and level 2. Level 1 is a 1-day in-person workshop. And we've just come through offering that to a few select folks that we targeted over the course of November. We have lots of awesome insights that we learned through that experience and we'll be integrating into our evaluation. And in the new year, we'll be rolling into level 2, which will be facilitating clinical learning in your educator role. And it's a more in-depth program, which will take place over 8 days. And we will be offering first dibs to the folks that participated in our level 1 program as an opportunity to continue scaffolding on their learning. And we will be working through those to see how they land with our crew. So here's where we are. We've just finished rolling out level 1. We worked through 3 cohorts of learners and we had amazing participation. I'm kind of blown away that we had 100% of folks who signed up attend all 3 sessions, with one exception, which I think is kind of amazing in this day and age. So just going to celebrate that for a second. And really looking forward to launching the level 2 cohorts in the new year. So we couldn't do everybody all at once, and we didn't want to do everybody all at once because we wanted to do a sample, a pilot, to make sure that this approach is going to really hit the mark for folks in Island Health. So once we've had the opportunity to work through these pilot groups, we are going to be doing a fulsome evaluation to reflect on how things have gone, what did we learn, what would we want to change, to make decisions about how we want to move forward from this point. Do we operationalize this program and offer it to more folks? Do we need to do some reworking to make it work better for our learners? So hopefully we will be able to roll out this program to more folks longer term and open up the program to all folks who are currently in a clinical educator role. I know we have currently about 280 clinical educators across the island. We're working on nailing down that list specifically. And then we're also going to look at exploring offering levels 3 and 4 if those are seen as helpful progression for folks in our organization. Once we feel like we've satisfied the needs of our clinical educators in the organization, we do anticipate opening up the program to a broader audience, since we know learning is something that so many individuals in a wide variety of roles in our organization are contributing to supporting. So level 1 in particular, we're quite keen to be able to offer to folks in positions like peer mentorship roles, preceptors, clinical nurse leaders, coordinators, many of those folks who in the day-to-day course of their work do engage in supporting the learning needs of their staff as well. So that's what we are hoping and endeavoring to do in our time ahead with our educator pilot. And I just want to acknowledge I've had lots of folks reach out to me saying, hey, sign me up. When can I attend? And I'm just like so excited by that. And also, it's coming. It's coming. If you haven't heard from us yet, I hope that we'll be able to reach out to you in the coming year with an opportunity for you to register and participate if you weren't part of our first go round. So again, pop your questions that you have for me into Slido. But that is the end of my updates for the Educator Pathway program. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody again. And pull up my agenda. to remind myself that Sonia is our next on deck. Sonia, are you ready to share?
Yes, I'm just going to get myself started here.
And Sonia, we can see your speaking notes. Perfect. There you go.
Okay, sorry. Thanks. Well, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Sonia Minsma, and thank you for the opportunity for me to kind of showcase some of the standardization we're working within our specialty practice and sponsored education department. I'm part of, recently moved over under Darren's team under practice and learning and simulation, which is, of course, part of Cindy's team under professional practice and the learning portfolio. I'm speaking to you from the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin-speaking people in the area of the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations, and my pronouns are she and her. And in this presentation, I'm just going to briefly touch on kind of the standardizing we're doing within specialty nursing and sponsored nursing, the BSN Learning Pathway as a provincial initiative, some of the starting of the allied health sponsored education and the provincial earn and learn, and just a brief bit on our e-learning modules. And in the audience with me today is my two colleagues that work with me in this work, and is Tammy Pentney and Beth Mainprice. So in a sponsored or in our specialty practice and sponsored education, it's really been developed through extensive collaborative processes, lots of community of the practice, and it's really the processes with clinical operations and corporate support, and often many PSI partners. And the work is always evolving, and it's been occurring over the last number of years. But our goal is to support the clinical operations to offer a standardized specialty or sponsored training opportunity. And that tends to show up when people need, aligning with the collective agreements, when they need more than 225 of formal education in order to work in their complex care area, then the area has highest need. And we really want, our intent is to remove some of the financial barriers that Island House is doing and trying to support people with sponsorship, and really to help people get into areas that of interest them or expand their learning. And so in these programs, clinical operations is really responsible for the education standards, identifying that in the model use. So for example, perioperative uses the ARN, whereas CT is using NATE training. And they also identify their service levels. So the tertiary sites might have different education with their tiered levels, and the models of care with their staff mix. So that could be adding different disciplines. Whereas our role is to supporting the facilitation of a regional standardized approach to the recruiting, the hiring, evaluation, and the reporting of these sponsored learners and the models. And so that's where you can see that there's a lot of collaborative work that occurs there. Our Island Health specialty nursing and sponsored education has really evolved. People, to start this program, you need to bring on staff that are fully practicing with a full licensure. And the sponsorship often includes kind of a compressed time frame, a shorter time, full-time education that we pay for along with tuition. And then it's valued at approximately 20 to 60,000 per learner. And then our interested staff kind of complete prerequisites if there is one, and they apply through the VI hire and the standard, and they get selected as an ideal candidate because of their experience in, or interest in the area that they're applying to. These learning pathways do require a return of service. And as I mentioned, that's part of the collective agreement language when we do have a sponsorship, when we're providing education for more than 225 hours. And this area seems to be evolving a lot. So currently Island Health has 16 programs areas offering either regular, ad hoc, or pilot sponsored opportunities. And so our work is to work with them and standardize them. Some are more standardized than others. And the programs are really to enhance the retention rates by providing clearer pathways and opportunities for growth and learning within programs. And this is a model of a provincial initiative right now, is Action 61, the BSN Learning Pathway. And our Island Health, particularly our perioperative partners, are well versed in this model. They've been doing it for over 20 years, probably more like 22 years. But this model is where a BSN student formally starts their training during the undergrad and then they complete it post-graduation in that specialty unit. So it's that same scaffolding where we practice it across time. In these models, they may or may not have a return to service. It doesn't happen in the shorter pathways, but in some of the longer, there would be when it's taken over a year. And the objective of the BSN learning pathway really is to help the certain identified students that really know where they want to work and to help them get into that area of interest early. And so we were helped by removing some of the barriers to get in, and we provide that scaffolding learning. We reduce some of the transition shock by bringing them in quicker and support them to develop a rapport in that specialty area of where they're interested. This pathway has a lot of processes, and we try to make it. The applicants apply through their post-secondary partner, so it's a real partnership relationship. And so they screen the applicants first to meet certain criteria, and then they come to us as Island Health, and then we screen them. And so when a student is selected, as I mentioned in that last term of their degree, is when they start the return of, or they start the program to complete it after being hired as an employee post-graduation. And we currently have 3 established programs, as I mentioned, perioperative, PACU, and also NICU, and those are regional programs. We're piloting 3 programs as well, and so we have a pilot right now in perinatal at Nanaimo, and we're going to be piloting one in CVU at Jubilee and PES emergency at Nanaimo. And so those latter 2 pilots are going to start in January. And the 2025-26 provincial priority is to offer this pilot in an emergency room. So we're going to try to work on doing some work in that area. And we're always actively looking for other areas to pilot. So we have like renal's very interested, and they need to have complex care areas for the BSN pilot. There's a bit more restrictions, but within the specialty, we also are looking for when people are sponsoring education to kind of align it to a clearer process. Our program also supports the provincial earn and learn opportunities, and this is for some of the unregulated professionals. And the intent of this one is to attract new people to the health sector. So the earn and learn train individuals in high demand areas. And this particular one, the HCAP, is really overseen more by workforce strategy, but we really support them in the learner's scope of practice and understanding that. And so we have on the screen, we've showed 2 options of these earn and learn pathways that are available, one in the MHSU and one in the HCAP, which is in acute, community, and in long-term care. And so these, again, they're looking right now to work on increasing the enrollment of the First Nation, the Métis, and the Inuit populations. And they also do require a return of service. And so we're learning and growing as these expand. And the allied health sponsored education, also sometimes known as earn and learn, and that's where we have a bit of work to clarify the difference between a sponsored education and an earn and learn. But these are really to support the delivery of also excellent care across the healthcare community, but in these high demand allied health departments and professions. And again, we really want to enhance by helping create a career pathway and opportunity for growth within the allied health world. And we want to emphasize that sometimes career progression and, or the ability to do some scaffolded learning. So maybe I want to start as a farm tech and then I become a pharmacist assistant, or maybe become a pharmacist, and just really trying to help those opportunities. And really looking for areas for increased support or enrollment, again, with our Indigenous partners and Métis and Inuit population, and really advancing the anti-racism and cultural sensitivity in some of these areas of work. And so we support the Island Health Program operations by, helping them design, deliver, and evaluate their standard models. And we do that through consultation and helping them identify a framework, making sure it aligns with the collective agreement. So we, again, bring in a lot of our labor relation partners. And we also share practices that have been used by other allied health or, maybe nursing practices to kind of understand pathway options that could be developed. And then we support them in creating or updating standard resources and tools. So that could be a return to service agreement, or it could be an education sponsorship agreement. And then we really just try to support the standardization across the pathway to make sure it's regional, and promoting communication and collaboration to our partners. And we have Island Health purchases modules, and we currently purchase these online modules from Elsevier, and we've been doing that for a number of years. And they're really intended to provide resources for people that want to have more, gain more knowledge or refresh skills. And Island Health is regularly looking to refresh what would be the best use of modules. And again, a lot like Candace said, we're looking what it's hard to find one model that fits everybody's needs, but we're really trying to find what would work best regionally, what can be used. And if you haven't looked at them in the slides when they're shared, the emergency one particularly has lots that can be used in other areas, or like the PACU modules has conscious sedation for areas that do that. So it may be worth that maybe you could use one module for your units to just, that may be beneficial. So I just wanted to include them as just as an FYI for people to let them know. And if you look at our e-learning module, the access there on our specialty nursing page, it can give you details of what competencies we're trying to cover. And so that's the gist. We have a lot of work to continue to develop these programs, but I just wanted to provide people with a quick kind of overview of what we're working on, because as I said, there's more and more specialty areas coming out on a regular basis. So as Ken just mentioned, if you have any questions, either put it in the chat or in the Slido, and by all means, email us through our specialty practice website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonia. And I just grabbed a link to the e-learning education resources on Specialty Topics internet page. Hopefully that's the right one you were referencing. Feel free to correct that link if I got it wrong. No, I guessed right. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sonia. Okay. Next up, we have Darren and Erin, which rhymes so nicely, to share with us a little bit about the Clinical Education Cross Continuum Committee, which I lovingly refer to as cookies because it's way easier to say. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Super happy to be here. So my name's Darren Abbey. I'm calling from Snuneymuxw territory today. I do use he, him, identify as a CNE at heart, I must say. I'm a clinical nurse educator at heart. Really happy to see so many familiar faces. Going to share in the next 7 slides, really only 6, some content from the clinical governance side of our work together, and the so-called Clinical Education Cross Continuum Committee that I have the pleasure of co-chairing with Erin Bergen. And before I go any further, just really not to acknowledge the incredible support, and I'm going to say integral support we get from Mary Elabijo, who is our coordinator. Every time I talk about the work of clinical governance, I just invite us all to acknowledge how important, and I'm just going to say essential, the Secretariat is. We really need their help, and they're integral to this work. So I'm just acknowledging Mary's contribution. So what is the ClinEd CCC? So here's where we're located in clinical governance. Now, some of you may be seeing this for the first time. Some of you have seen this before. We presented this content last week at one of the learning bursts. And this is the model, if you're not familiar, of our clinical governance initiative that is really now in operations. We've been standing this up for some time. So as you can see, there's this green square around these committees that support the ICGC, which is really to be thought of with beside the board there as our sort of senior leadership table, the integrated clinical governance table. And there's these committees adjacent to that support. And as we go across the slide, see the care networks that I hope you're familiar with now. And there, again, all of that is to support that purple or mauve circle, which really by scale should be many times larger, because that's the point of care, that's the community that we serve, and that's sort of where all of us need to have our eyes on. So all of that to say, well, let's go back to the cross continuum committees, and you can see there's a list of our sister committees, and the one in particular we're here to talk about is this Clinical Education Cross Continuum Committee. So hopefully just to locate us in that, model. And this model and all of this work, there is a Clinical Governance Initiative webpage, and there is the Advancing the Understanding module that helps sort of orientate people to all of that work. And I hope that this isn't new to many of you. So this slide really helps to answer some of those questions that we want you to know the answer to. So who is, what is, etc. So what does this committee do? As you can see, our role in the clinical governance work is to support the quality initiative plans, so quality improvement plans of the assorted tables. And you can imagine that most of those plans have an educational component. And so our role, in addition to a few other tasks, is to support those education plans. So I'll get in a minute down to talk about how it is we do that. Before I do, I want to acknowledge that we also support those tables with resource asks and within the clinical governance context. But I need to just articulate at this stage that that doesn't mean we've got people. We don't have a bunch of educators, waiting to be assigned. And I think in the early days of clinical governance, that's what people thought, that we had all of you ready to be assigned. And and we know that's not true. But that said, what we can do is say, hey, this is a really important initiative and we support it, and we need to find the human resource to do it. So in what ways does this committee impact the point of care? Well, the education efforts, as you can see, really need to be of a caliber that we can be proud of, which includes the implementation, the design, the evaluation. And I would highlight those three parts of our work. I know as an educator, I got very little support on evaluation, so little, in fact, that some of the work I did wasn't really evaluated at all, and I wondered why it wasn't sustainable. So that said, I just want to sort of shine light on those different components of the work. I know many of you know this and are experts. So a little list of some of the people who are on this committee. So as you can see, we've got representation from different parts of the organization. And our membership is started pretty small. We've recently expanded in our sort of first wave of expansion. And we're looking to have representation of people who understand education in their part of the organization. And we appreciate that doesn't mean every part of the organization. It does mean a crew that can consult, that can ask, that can receive content from a part of the organization and talk about. So we're trying to find that sweet spot of the right amount of people with the right amount of knowledge so that we can work with everyone else. And that's still declaring itself. How do we do this work? There's a couple of specific resources that we have. These are also available on the Advancing the Understanding module. I'm presenting in Teams, so you can hyperlink on those two, and hopefully they'll open for you those two specific resources. So the two specific resources I'm talking about are how do you develop a learning plan? And there's a template that's been well established in the organization that Clicks has developed over the years, continuing to invite feedback on that, and the intake form. So the intake form is, you can think of as the way in which if an effort is coming to our table, that's sort of the filter with which it would be passed, and likewise the filter with which we would look at it. So that's a series of questions, many of which won't surprise you. Things like, who is being consulted? To what degree, have you considered whether or not this educational effort exists somewhere else that maybe we can repurpose or we can add? Evaluation, those kinds of things. So it's really a high level intake form to sort of get to the details and try to enhance the work that we're being asked to review. So an example, we are working with our colleagues in prevention and control, because they have an accreditation standard to track mandatory education. So our task was to help them with that, meeting that standard that they have. So a couple of other slides for me. Here's another example of work that we've done. So here is an ask that came from our emergency department care network colleagues, and that we sort of worked with them on what exactly are you looking for. But what it came down to is they wanted support, which they're receiving from us, on how do they standardize their orientation. Not to be confused with education or that sort of ongoing expertise of being an emerge nurse, but what would a standardized orientation look like for emerge? And so we're supporting that effort. Another example, this one may also be familiar to many of you. This one came from our pediatric care network colleagues, and they asked for and are receiving our help with this work around restraints for our pediatric population. Many of you may know that's been a real hole in our organization that I'm happy to say we are working to support and fill. So like every other good clinical governance table, we also have plans of our own that we're moving forward. So in addition to supporting others, these are kind of the things on our work plan. So one of the items that was identified is this need to really work through and clarify, what do we mean when we say mandatory or required education? And so we've started that work. Similarly, what comes hand in hand with that is the need, therefore, to track that work. As I've mentioned, we've expanded our membership from the initial core team that we started with. And so those efforts have started. We've been asked to develop kind of a learning strategy for the organization, which you can imagine as being sort of a principles-based document that we've started. Less started maybe, it's in its early days, and we'll be for sure reaching out to you as our community to work through that. That'll be a document that'll give people a sense of what sort of best practice is across the education continuum. And getting near to the end of the content I'm going to share, we're going to continue to review that intake process. We probably need a prioritization process as well, as our inboxes are getting full. We're going to continue to socialize this work. And so really happy to have this invitation. Thank you. And last but not least, we've been tapped to support the work of infusion pump training in the organization, which probably needs a bit of a lift. So that's what I have to share. I am excited by this work. It's super fun so far. Really happy to be here today. And before we sign off from this part, I'll stop screen sharing. But Erin, what would you add?
Hi, thanks, Darren. What I would add is I'm looking at our Slido questions, and I'm thinking a lot of this stuff is probably going to relate to ways in which we're working within the clinical governance structure, but I don't know if that means much, right, at this table. So what I would like to say is, if you have any questions about an initiative that you're looking to push through, do something different, need a new standard, need to bring something up, please connect with Darren and I. We're happy to even just talk it out, see what you need, see how we can help you formulate a SBAR, or even if it is to move through the clinical governance structure, because I know that this whole new way of doing is in its infancy stages for many of you. And so please keep that in mind to reach out if you have any further questions on the way in which clinical governance is kind of weaving through your local networks. We're happy to talk to you about the way we can help in clinical education.
Thank you. Lastly, I'll just add, there is a one number to call, as it were. There is clinical governance, CGII@islandhealth.ca, and that sort of gets you to your on-ramp of all of this clinical governance business. And so that's another way to connect with us. Thank you so much.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And it's 2 o'clock on the dot. We are right on schedule. So proud so far. And just going to check, I believe I saw that Sarah Mabbitt and Sarah Sheridan were able to join in the call. And they'll be sharing next about some eye health education. And just as they're getting ready to share, I just wanted to also reflect on the Slido. I'm super excited by the questions that you're asking because I think as we work through those, it'll be an awesome opportunity to share a little bit about how these different puzzle pieces that we are sharing about today really connect with one another in quite intentional and meaningful ways. So looking forward to digging into those. So please keep those questions coming in Slido. I'll pop the link in the chat again. And then I'm going to stop talking and hand off to my lovely colleagues, the Sarahs. You should be a band, by the way, the Sarahs.
Just something. Why don't I quickly introduce myself and then I'll hand over to Sarah. So hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all here. I'm Sarah Sheridan. I'm the Eye Health Director that has responsibility for education, governance, and communication. And within Eye Health Education, it's the overall strategy and also our teams that create all the assets for clinicians and allied health and NUAs and providers, including pharmacists and midwives as well. So Sarah's here to share the information today, but we are so excited to be with all of you and looking forward to the work that is in front of all of us and how we can support you better.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I just check that you guys can see my screen? Because I can't see it on. Okay, great. I can still see all your faces, so that's fantastic.
You're good.
Awesome. Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Sarah Mabbitt. I'm a senior specialist for clinician education with Eye Health, working alongside Sarah Sheridan. I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of familiar names. But for those who don't know me, I'm a nurse by background. I was a CNE supporting Nanaimo during our full activation. And prior to that came from a fully activated site intensive care unit in Alberta. So I am delighted to see everything that's been shared today because being an educator is near and dear to my heart. And that is why I do the role I'm in now, is to make a difference and to support our educator groups. And yeah, so just looking forward to sharing with you all today some of the work that we've been doing to also improve the quality of the learning experience with EHR education, as well as being aligned with everybody here on working towards standardization. And yeah, so we'll get into it when we have 10 minutes and we'll share some of our latest updates. Here. Okay, so this will be some new information for folks who are currently working at non-activated sites and a little bit familiar for those who have just been activated through our CPOE activation. So one improvement our team did was to trial a new learning platform called the Oracle Learning Portal for our CPOE activation. So the new Oracle Learning Portal is a web-based learning platform that's used to deliver role-based EHR learning content, which we call learning journeys. The learning includes short video lessons, interactive simulations, and links to self-directed online learning resources such as workbooks. So aiming to hit on all different types of learners. 81 journeys were created for our South Island CPOE activation. And then we also further created journeys to support our fully activated sites to be able to train to full functionality post-activation. So for right now, our portal and journeys are available for operational use at Nanaimo, VGH, RGH, Gorge Road, and CISC. The portal can be accessed from the Citric Workspace icon by clicking on the EHR Education app. Learners would sign in with their username and password, which takes them to their own private learning dashboard where assigned learning can be completed. So for right now, our ClinDoc activated and non-activated sites will continue to access their learning on the Learning Hub. And as each future site activates and as we make enhancements, they'll be supported to begin using the new learning portal. Our next big action item and bucket of work was improving our access to in-the-moment resources. So our team did a large analysis of all of the EHR resources that were out there, and there were many in many various versions and statuses. And so we did a full review and have archived, updated, and migrated all of our resources into a digital hub, which we call the EHR Learning Hub. All of our activated positions have access to this on the toolbar in PowerChart. And we've placed a redirect inside eCoach for those folks who are not yet activated. So this is live. It's an interactive tool that our learners can use in the moment to access resources. It has a great search function, so they can search the entire database, or they can click into one of their program areas, click their specific role, and search just their own page. We're currently onboarding other departments like transfusion medicine and pharmacy to also migrate their learning here as well. So looking to improve our accessibility and quality of learning. What our team is focusing on right now is to reestablish our connections with our clinical nurse educators and practice leads and education delegates on site. So the goal is to support each program with EHR education and training related to changes, and strive to ensure that the learning meets the needs of the organization and the learners. So our team has been through a few PDSA cycles related to EHR education. We've moved from the Learning Hub, we've moved from workbook only to the Learning Portal, and so we want that work to continue. And so we are just in the process of reestablishing those communication channels, starting with our fully activated sites and touching base with them post-activation. And then reestablishing with our non-activated sites as well, because we still support them, and we'll be able to continue communicating changes and any learning and training that the educator groups need. Something new that we're working on right now is some support for student learning. So we recognize that students are unique and different, and that they don't need to know everything about how to be an MRN when they're just in year 2. So what we're doing is partnering with our student practice group, Camosun College, UVEC, and VIU. And we're working on creating a student-focused learning pathway that will better support our learners or students who will be coming to placements here at fully activated sites in Island Health. So the goal of the new pathways will not be to teach them everything all at once. We'll be looking at aligning their EHR learning and competencies at the right time, which is when it is applicable to their clinical placement and their course objectives. And finally, just some EHR training resources if anybody has some further questions. You can visit our newly updated iHealth intranet site, which we've just updated to be a little bit more clear around the 3 different levels of activation across the island. So we have our EHR learning for fully activated sites, our ClinDoc sites, as well as our non-activated regional clinical settings. We have a couple of email addresses that you can use to reach out to us directly. ehrlearning@islandhealth.ca is an email you could use for any course-related questions or to report an issue or something not working. Our activated sites are using this email address to request enrollment for new staff, and we're also using that for our student enrollments as well. And then our clinical informatics educators is a group inbox that all of our team has access to. So for any content-related questions or to request a resource, you could use that one. And our stream-specific CIEs will be able to see that, and there'll be coverage there if someone's on holidays, and you'll get your quickest, best response by reaching out there. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And Sarah, oh, I'm so excited to see all the improvements that have been made through the years. Oh my goodness, how much have we learned on that journey? I want to go and check out the new and updated sites. This is really great. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing those updates. Okay. Thank you all for your patience. We're finally going to get some time to dig into the questions that folks have been popping into Slido along the way. And I love the questions that are coming in. I am going to try and work through them from the upvoted ones down through the list. I'm going to throw the ball at some of my colleagues here on the call who I think might be best positioned to answer them. And the most popular question or statement, suggestion question, many educators and leaders struggle with tracking required and recommended education. Could the development of health authority-wide tracking tool be supported? And before I hop on my favorite soapbox on that topic and spend an hour chatting about it, I'm wondering, Erin, do you want to share a little bit about how this relates to the clinical governance work and our new LMS system?
Sure. Yeah. I was looking at this one and it's got a lot of hits. So tracking required education is a problem for Island Health in the sense that what does required mean? That's the piece. So we have NEO, which is a mandatory or required 5.5 hours, I think it is, for all new employees. And then we have education that's really important to our clinical units and our care areas that those folks absolutely have to work there. So how do we then track what is a organizational-wide priority required versus mandatory learning? And then what is a unit specific must have because you're working here required learning? We have WorkSafe BC. So we have violence prevention. We have a lot of courses where we know for sure you have to have that. And Candace was referencing a new learning platform that's coming and it will replace Learning Hub. And that's in a few years from now. But some of that work is what is our required learning? And so part of the Clinical Education Cross Continuum Committee, which Darren shared those slides and talked about that, is what is the difference between required versus mandatory? If we could get that down, at least to the level of the health authority accepting that, yes, this is this and this is that, that's going to really help us to structure what we need to prioritize and focus on. So I see that as like a step one. But a tracking system, that's a really great idea. We're looking to do that within strategic education priorities that are like region-wide, structural changes or like actual have impact changes to our care areas. And then there's just like the simple, like we need to do this because it's really the good and right work. And so how does that get onto that list? And how do we track that? And then when you do something like that, maybe somebody over in North Vancouver Island needs to know about that because that would really improve that. And by tracking it, we can then see all the work that's being done across the island. So we're not having people working in silos. I don't know, Darren, if you have anything to add to that, but standardization is probably a big word for that, to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to hear and happy to see that this is the number one question on the docket. We do have a bit of a straw dog sort of criteria of what we think mandatory education will equal. What we're realizing is that we're not unique in not knowing this. And so one of the things that is bubbling up for us is maybe this is the provincial initiative. And so we are looking, across the Georgia Strait to some of our colleagues. I do want to share that as we get sort of further along, we will for sure, I will commit to sharing this draft criteria because this has to work. This has to work. And so it's got implications for sure. So more to come. And thank you so much for asking this question.
Thank you both for chiming in on that. So my Cliff's Notes reflection of this is we've really got to nail down what are our criteria for making something mandatory or recommended. How do we put something in that box? And then how are we going to track it? Because we can track everything up the yin yang, but who's going to actually look at it and care about it? So making sure that that tracking is, if we're putting in the time and energy and effort to track something, who's even going to look at it and what are they going to do with it? So creating some of those frameworks to support that work. And then ideally, we'll be able to start compiling that list of what are all those things that we are saying as an organization and who do they apply to and when do they have to have them done by? Is it really before the first day or is it the first 3 months? Is it the first 6 months? Lots of good work ahead. Can you tell I'm eager? Okay, that knocks off our first 2 questions. The next one down, I am wondering if Megan, Shauna, or Mike want to jump on this one to chat about what is the communication pathway around new initiatives from regional to clinical educators. Do you want to share a little bit around how we might be using our new forums to support some of those communications? Not to put anyone on the spot.
Yeah, sure, I can tackle that one. Yeah, so starting January 22nd is our current launch date for the community of practice. This is where every educator on the island is going to be invited, and we're excited to have everyone come and kind of voice their concerns. What are some of the hot topics that they need addressed, and yeah, from there, I did see a question also. I can answer this one too about the representation of the because that's the main goal is to have equal representation from across the island to have all those voices heard. So for the Clinical Educators Network Council, since it's only going to be about around 25 clinical educators, we'll be sending out an expression of interest probably sometime around May of 2025. And from there will be questions, specific questions on where you're located, and so that's how we'll get that equitable representation. So yeah, so we're also creating a team SharePoint where everyone will be free to post resources, and if we'll be able to, if you have any further questions that's outside of the COP time, because it's every other month, we'll be able to accommodate any questions you have there too.
Thanks so much for jumping in for that one, Mike. Yeah, so we have a number of different ways in which we're hoping and intending on connecting with the broader educator community. I know the current experience is often very much you show up Monday morning and, oh, there's something new for you to roll out. Surprise! We're really hoping to change some of that experience with a bit more upstream communication through our clinical governance, have a better sense of what's coming. So our regional educators will be able to proactively reach out to the educators that will be impacted by upcoming changes and initiatives so that you feel well-informed, engaged in the process, feel prepared to support. What a notion. Just like the work that Sarah Mabbitt's doing with setting up those new connections with the different educator groups at the activated sites so that they feel well engaged and prepared for that iHealth specific work. Okay. How is clinical educator defined? What is the definition of a non-clinical educator role? Ooh, loaded question. Well, we, for the purposes of our work, had to create a bit of a box to define the scope of the folks that we would be supporting as clinical educators. And I've worked with our partners in human resources to try and identify the very broad number of current job descriptions that are in use in Island Health, where folks have a primary function of supporting the clinical learning needs of their teams. So there's a lot of different titles. There's that practice resource, is a common term used for a lot of the allied health positions. CNE is kind of an obvious one, but there's a lot of variety of different titles used that we're capturing under that umbrella term of clinical educators. Ultimately, the heart of it is who are the folks that we're relying on most to support the workplace learning needs of our care teams. So that's how I define that. I can share job descriptions with you if you're interested. I don't have a definition for a non-clinical educator role other than the folks that I didn't capture in my definition. And I might be missing folks. So happy to engage in conversations with folks if they think that they haven't been included in the right groups. The next question we have is around island health policies and procedures and guidelines. It's been a problem for years. I know policy team handles this, but any plans to improve? Elsevier often misses organization-specific details. Ooh. Anybody keen to respond to that one, or is that something that we need to follow up with our partners in the policy office? Erin,
I can take that hot potato. This is something that has come up and across the clinical governance structure is the policies and procedures that teams are looking to create, net new policies and procedures, are because we don't have the right structure in place for meeting the demands of those specific teams, those clinical areas, or even the changes. So it is something that we're looking at, and I will pass this over to our policy. I've already actually submitted it into my team's chat with that group, and I'm happy to answer and follow up with that as to like what is the next steps for that, because it is definitely, as the holder of the subscriptions for Elsevier's policies and procedures, it is something that we look at every year that we renew it, or every time we go to renew the contract. Is this still important? Yes, it is. It's still important as it covers a mass amount, and it takes away work from our clinical educators, because otherwise you're spending time working on and revising all of those documents. So what do we do with that gap where what we're seeing? And I'm hoping that's something that we can address within the community of practice and the CENC as well. I hope that helps answer that for now.
It does. And I see Erica's hand. Is that a follow-up question on that particular item, Erica? You can take yourself off mute.
Oh, there you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry, I've been having trouble with my audio, so I'm never entirely sure if I'm just talking to myself or not. I came from interior health, and we had the same problem with Elsevier because it's such a broad, like it's not site specific. But I know the professional practice office there managed to somehow work with Elsevier, and they had a IH specific tab that came first. And there you could load any site specific information that you felt was missing from the content. And it was quite helpful because in lieu of right, I'm sure it works the same way here. In lieu of a policy, Elsevier is your guiding document. And so you can use it as a guiding document, add what you feel is necessary, and then there's your policy.
Erica, I'd love to touch base offline if we could, and we can look and make sure that that is a feature that we are subscribing to, because if that is something, and then we're not using it, we should look into that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if I can always also put you in touch with the person in the professional practice and interior health that I worked with who got that tab.
Sure, I'll connect with you. Thanks, Erica.
Thanks.
And Erin, I would just recommend that you contact with Christina, because I believe it is a feature we have with Christina Berlanda about what's standardized and what's not, and what's updated.
Yes, I will be reaching out to our professional practice colleagues to see where that's at. I wonder if there's history there too, if they were using it before. Okay.
No, I think they didn't want to use it because of you had to, every time you uploaded and updated it, you had to change it and own it. It was the ownership piece of it.
Okay, we'll take this offline. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm just noticing there are so many questions here, and we have 5 more minutes, so we'll keep working through the questions for the next 5 minutes. And then I see there are a number of questions specifically related to EHR learning that I'll pass along to Sarah Mabbitt and Sarah Sheridan to hopefully be able to share some updates back on those specifics.
And
Does that
Sarah's
work for you,
had to
Sarah?
jump off,
Oh, no
Candace.
worries.
So we can try,
I
or we
will.
may have to bring it back.
Yeah, absolutely. We can capture some follow-up details to share out with the recording. That's great. Okay. All right. Oh my goodness, I just fumbled my Slido and it resorted my questions just to confuse me. Having a moment of humanity here. Where did I leave off? Okay. There are a couple of questions related to sort of the resourcing and ratios of clinical educators in our organization, interested in looking at standardizing of ratios, advocating for more positions, and oh my goodness, I definitely want to be with folks on this journey. And one of the things that I'm excited about when we're going to transition next to our survey results review is having a look at some of the things that educators are working on currently that are occupying their headspace, their calendar, their will to live, that might not necessarily need to be on educators' plates, that we can work with operational leaders to explore if there's other folks on the team that could support with some of those activities so that we're making the best use of the folks that we do have today. And also really happy to work with folks on advocating for additional resourcing. I know, Erin, that's some conversations that you and I have had with a few different leaders around operational leaders putting together briefing notes and things to take forward to their executive leadership to advocate for additional funding for educators in their teams. A great example is nutrition services. They don't have an educator for dietitians anywhere on the island. What the heck? So I've been working with that leader to chat about some ideas for putting forward requests for funding for that. So all that to say, we are in partnership. We are not in a position to necessarily direct or fund additional positions since we are a distributed education model in Island Health. Okay. Are there plans for an orientation or onboarding process for new educators? Yes. Yes, there is. And Maya, I saw you grabbing links on the side. Do you mind popping a link in the chat to our onboarding course? If you are in a clinical educator position and you're new to the role and you haven't already been registered in our onboarding program, this is something that the CLICS team started running in June of this year. We have an online e-learning course followed by a Teams connection opportunity called New Educator Connect. And it's intended to supplement the onboarding support and guidance that you're getting from your operational leader, because every role is different. You're going to need to know the idiosyncrasies of where you are and what your leader's expectations, hopes, and dreams are for you. But we are really excited to help play a supporting role in that process to introduce folks to the learning environment and context that we have here in Island Health, help you learn a little bit more about who's who in the Island Health Zoo. So please check that out if you have not yet. And I'm going to do one more question, and then I'm going to hand over the mic to my colleagues to finish us out on some of the survey results. And the next question I see is, can an experienced educator attend the educator pathway? Yes-ish. How do you like that for an answer? While we're in the pilot phase, we have specifically targeted offering registration to folks that are newer in the role, since they are the ones that are the most likely to benefit from this education support to get them up and running in their role. So while we're in the pilot phase, there is sort of a select crew that we've reached out to participate. But my hopes and ambitions are that when this pilot is a raving success and we move to operationalizing it, it will be offered to all clinical educators, no longer, wow, tripping over my tongue, no matter how long you've been in the role, to ensure that we're all able to use some of the same language, similar approaches, and methodologies that come from evidence-based approaches to supporting workplace learning. Not to say that you aren't doing a great job right now, but an opportunity to check in and validate, and also an opportunity to share your insights and experience with some of your peers who might be newer to the role. So there's my yes-ish answer. More to come. Okay, I will try to work with my colleagues to follow up on some of the questions that have been submitted through here so far. And I'm sure that these will inspire lots of the opportunities, conversations that we'll be having in our upcoming community of practice. So our final note here, I'm going to toss the ball to Shauna to chat about the survey results.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so thank you everybody once again for joining us today. Before I get started, I wanted to acknowledge the behind the scenes efforts of Megan Schultz, as well as learning consultant Christina Mills and business analyst Megan Sims, who supported the extraction and collation of the survey data. My name is Shauna. Just as a reminder, I'm one of the new clinical or regional clinical educators, and my pronouns are she, her. So let's start with, why do we even ask for this? There was a desire to understand more about the functions and tasks of educators and what they're currently doing that could be potentially either better supported or redistributed altogether. This survey was a touch point to gain anonymous feedback directly from our educators. We also desired a means to check in with educators as the Regional Clinical Educator Program is rolling out. And it also provides us a starting point to understand what's happening across the region for various educators. This survey captures a snapshot in time of what's currently occurring, and it's going to assist us to consider if change has occurred over a period of time. A few points to be aware of before we dive into the data. 42 responses were received out of approximately 280 clinical educators across Island Health. So we had about a 15% response rate. This data was analyzed to identify keywords and phrases. And again, it's just meant to be a starting point. Where do we begin? Many themes are linked to our future work, as we've already mentioned. And because many responses were possible within this survey, you may see that the pie graphs won't always add up to 100%. As I move through these slides, I'll leave about 5-second pause for just appreciating the information on the slide before I speak to the data so it doesn't scramble our brains. And we understand there's a lot of information to take in, so I also want to offer the reassurance that in the coming weeks, I think we've given ourselves about a 2-week deadline to produce and distribute an infographic for everybody to appreciate on their own time. So there's no need to screenshot or follow along. So regarding our respondents, we can see that we have representation from each of our consolidated local health areas. If you're curious to know more about those consolidated local health areas, there is an intranet site for that. And I believe Maya will post a link to that intranet site in our chat for you to have as a reference. This slide assures us that we have good representation of educator voices from across the whole of Island Health. And a quick housekeeping note for those brains who want to associate a region with a color, like mine did when I first looked at this, please note that the subsequent pie graph colors are relative to the content and not to the region. So further to regional representation, we also wanted to determine which care network various educators belonged to. Here we can see there's diversity among the many care networks, including surgery, community health services, critical care, medicine, mental health and substance use, perinatal, newborn and women's health, primary care, rehabilitation and restorative health, emergency medicine, long-term care, and pediatrics. One of the questions we asked educators was, what tasks or responsibilities do you view as non-educator work? Essentially, administrative tasks or non-clinical education tasks. This was a text box response, so here we've captured keywords and phrases within those responses that were provided. The key theme that we can see, obviously, is administrative tasks. Many responses indicated admin tasks, while others provided a bit more detail, such as supply management, space organization, cleaning up meeting rooms, scheduling, IT support, and either covering the floor or covering to support other leaders. There were also a few respondents who responded none, indicating that they had no non-educator tasks or responsibilities. We also asked, what important work or initiatives are you not able to get to or give your full attention to? Key themes emerging from this question are learning approaches, notably curriculum development and educational development. There's also a key theme of proactive learning, things like annual competencies or supporting performance reviews. Another theme was support resources, such as being able to provide bedside education, shoulder-to-shoulder support, or peer mentorship. And finally, another theme of safety initiatives, things like work-safe investigations came up. Another question we asked was, which aspects of clinical education standardization would you hope we focused on first? Where do you want us to get started? Here, we can see emerging themes such as prioritizing clarity of educator roles, as well as support and standardization for onboarding. We also see themes related to standardization of education and resources, specifically the need for clarity as to what's already available with respect to our policies, procedures, and guidelines. Even though there were only a few responses, it also does appear to be a need for ongoing support for CPOE, EHR, and iHealth education. We also wanted to know what's working well. So then we asked, what portion of your educator role provides you with the most fulfillment? Many respondents here indicated that connection with staff was a source of their fulfillment. Being able to coach, mentor, teach, and providing that shoulder-to-shoulder support are actions that we all find rewarding within our various educational roles. Also, being seen for the work that we do, being recognized, validated, and thanked for our work is a huge source of job satisfaction. Thank you again to the respondents who contributed. We greatly valued this feedback. And so you might be wondering, what's next? Overall, the results found many opportunities to strengthen and support clinical education across the portfolios in Island Health. The desire to standardize aspects of education is clear. Educators want a reduction of siloed work, consistent support, and to provide quality education. Some of this work is already underway, and we've spoken to that earlier. But just as a reminder and a recap, the Educator Pathway Program was established. We delivered 3 Level 1 pilot workshops throughout November. And earlier in this forum, we discussed other initiatives such as establishing the Community of Practice, the Clinical Educator Network Council, and an intake pathway so that we can continue to prioritize our future work requests. There's a lot more work that needs to be done behind the scenes to actualize these tasks, and we will move forward with the prioritization work. Our call to action to you is to make sure that you're on our email distribution list for all of our updates. There is a new list, distribution list that's specific to clinical educators. Those who are on this list will be added to the Community of Practice invite, and they're going to be given access to the RCEP team SharePoint, and we don't want you to miss out on it. The community of practice list is also embedded within the current interprofessional educator distribution list. So please don't worry that we're going to be double emailing you or spamming your inbox. We won't do that. Also, for awareness, the process to update your GAL has been simplified recently. So we do encourage that you check out the link to ensure that your role is updated as needed. And I believe Maya will support putting that link in the chat as well. Another call to action that you can do is you can save the date. Mike already mentioned, but our first community of practice meeting will be January 22nd, 2025. Future communications and invites will be shared in the coming weeks, but we're just really want to make sure that we promote it so that we generate great support and interest. And feel free to talk about it with your educator buddies, your counterparts, engage your leadership to ensure that you're able to set aside the time to participate in this meeting. And I'm sure that there's many questions that have come up for you. So feel free to continue to add your questions to the Slido so that we can ensure that your questions are answered appropriately in the coming weeks in case we run out of time today. And just as a reminder, all of your questions are anonymous. So I guess that's back over to you, Candace.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Shauna. I am really excited to all that is ahead of us collectively here. And I really hope that this has been a helpful opportunity to share a lot of the behind the scenes work that's happening through the various partners in the organization. I hope that you feel like you have been heard in your struggles and the opportunities that you see for our organization to improve the clinical learning experience, and can see how we are committed and passionate to helping you all in those endeavors. So I am going to have a look back at the Slido to see if we can continue answering some more of the questions that are in there, since we have a bit more time. But just acknowledging that other folks might have pressing needs to sign off today. Just wanted to appreciate everybody who showed up this afternoon. Really, really pleased that you made the time to join us. Okay. And the next question that I'm seeing, Cindy, I'm wondering if you might be able to speak to this one. It's a question if Island Health will endorse CNS, so clinical nurse specialist roles, to help ensure regional standardization.
Thanks, Candace. So absolutely, Island Health does endorse and does have clinical nurse specialists already in some areas across the region. One of the recommendations that came from the review and report that Candace referred to earlier in our time together included some recommendations around advanced practice support. So we are actually in the process of hiring currently an advanced practice lead, which the plan is to do similar work like we're working toward today around a community of practice and bringing a regional and standardized approach for our clinical nurse specialists. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. And there is work underway in the broad portfolio of professional practice and learning for that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Cindy.
Mm.
All right. Next up is a question about the council. So I'm guessing that's the Clinical Education Network Council. Will it be a mix of allied health and nursing? Yes, absolutely. And Mike, do you want to speak a little bit more to our plans for trying to get that broad representation?
Sure. So you can expect a expression of interest to go out sometime around May, and there'll be a variety of questions: what your profession is, what's your area of specialty, what area you represent. One of them is, are you allied health or from nursing background? And from there, we will do our best to find unique perspectives from everyone and have that equitable representation across the island.
Fabulous. Thanks, Mike. All right, next question. Wondering if cultural safety is embedded in all of the education programs developed, and if so, is Indigenous health part of this? Now, I'm going to preface my response with an assumption that you're referring to the education programs being run by CLICS and professional practice and learning. I can't speak to the broader sense, but what I will share is that we have definitely been deep in the journey in CLICS, really reflecting on our own practices in the context of healthcare and education, since both come from such colonial constructs. Really reflecting on the ways in which we are practicing our own work and supporting the education practice in our organization to really endeavor to move towards decolonizing our practices. And I say endeavor. I don't know what the endpoint is, what that looks like, but it is something that we're definitely committed to as a team to integrate into our work. And we have been really appreciative of the opportunities to engage with a variety of partners in the Indigenous health portfolio. We really benefited from the input of Benedict and Sigwan into some of the materials that we put together in the onboarding program, the clinical educator onboarding program, and have been looking to integrate some of the first people's principles of learning into how we are planning out our educator pathway program as well. And I was just chatting earlier today with Shauna about some more ideas that we have about integrating cultural safety conversations, reflections, group learning opportunities with our broader educator community. So it's definitely really important work for all of us to dig into, and we are here for it. Absolutely. The next question is, will Island Health ever include sponsorship of graduate studies in the Educator Pathway program? Ooh, so good. Potentially. The first step is to determine if offering Educator Pathway up to and including level 2 satisfies the needs of supporting development of competence for most clinical educators in our organization. The lovely thing about the Educator Pathway program is it's a progressive model that allows you to move into more complex aspects of education support in a health organization that applies to a smaller number of folks in our organization, but still there's a few of us here, as well as level 4, which is a sponsored learning opportunity to complete a master's degree in education. So we need to find out if the pilot works first, and if it does, then we can move on to exploring if integrating Educator Pathway level 3 and 4 will be the right choice for our organization. I also see sort of Erin and Cindy potentially leaning in. I'm wondering if there's anything that you want to add or correct to what I've shared so far.
I can hop in. I'm a strong advocate for continued learning. So from our lens, we would be endorsing moving into levels 3 and 4, just to clarify that that would certainly be a something for Island Health that we have not offered in the past. And I think it would align well with our other health authorities that have Educator Pathway in place and have had in place for, I think it's over a decade, where many people have have received their masters through the Educator Pathway level 4. So I think that's important.
Thanks, Candice and Erin. I think you both covered it for sure. Candice, like you said, level 1 and 2 now, and we're wanting to do everything we can. So it's something that we will advocate for. We don't have it available at the moment, but it's definitely part of the potential plan going forward.
Thank you. All right. Next question in Slido. Area of struggle is addressing the specific needs of our addictions active user patients on our inpatient units. Could this be a focused area for supporting? Ooh, and I'm curious if whoever added that question might be able to add a little bit more detail. Or is that an area of education support that you are seeing, or other aspects of supporting different processes, performance? Oh, I see a comment. Did I have? Oh, I see an offer from Sarah to reach out to connect around an approach that she tried at CDH recently. Sarah, that's a lovely offering. Thank you. That's fabulous. Okay.
Candace, I might add, and Erin, I'm wondering about the work in the that work that you and Amanda Lemon are leading together with the care planning. That will go ahead, Erin.
It's we have a care delivery working group as part of SUAM, Substance Use Addiction Medicine Task Force. We broke off and we're looking at care delivery. And so, like, do we have education for folks supporting persons who use substances in areas that are not mental health? And so how do we best support those folks? But in that is an inventory of all the courses and offerings that we have in the way of education. So we are working on that. We're looking and we will have a something. But I don't know if it, like, I would need more detail, so it might not hit the mark for everyone. So, but I'm happy to share more out when we have more.
I'm so glad you two made that connection. My mind blanked out for a moment. That's very helpful. All right. The next question we have is there a plan for Island Health to adopt, endorse, and support a learning platform that would be accessible to all programs across the health authority? Oh, now I'm curious about how you're defining learning platform. I know that we have a variety of different ways and means of sharing learning content and information in our organization, such as our learning hub, our learning management system, and our intranet. I'm curious if someone's able to provide a little bit more detail on that question as well, or if anybody else has a good response for it that I'm just not seeing yet. Thinking faces. We might have to circle back to that one.
I wonder if it's a little similar to the work being done, or the work that we did with the emergency department. Like that, you know, how we have a something for Emerge across the island. Is that like a learning platform? I don't know, but.
Oh, I see Jennifer has popped into the chat. I see lots of programs such as Oracle, Affinity, etc. LMS doesn't seem to be accessible for all. Ah, thank you for that added detail. Yeah. So we have lots of different tools for sharing out learning with folks. LMS should definitely be accessible to all Island Health employees and students, and currently affiliates and medical staff and volunteers. I don't think that discussion has come up in any of the forums that I've been participating in about trying to move away from any of those other ones. Oh, Darren, do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, hi. I see these as really different sort of entities. Like Affinity as a resource is web-based, and so it doesn't have, it's got a pretty low threshold of use. I'm not familiar with folks who can't access the LMS. I don't know. I can't think of a barrier to that, but Oracle for sure is a Cerner product. So is this a accessibility issue, or is it that there is different use cases? And so I'd be curious to have a conversation with you to support. I'm seeing that. No, yeah, sustainability. Sustainability, that's another conversation to be sure. I was asked this question yesterday about affinity. What happens, how long does the affinity course last for? And all I could come up with is as long as the company is in existence, which may not be very satisfying. So happy to chat more about that with you.
Thank you, Darren. And Krista, I see your hand.
Thank you. I just see the question about the learning, there was reference to the Learning Hub, and I just want to just reinforce for those of you who don't know, there's work that's happening on our HR system, because we all know the challenge around trying to, like when I first started, I said, oh, give me a list of all the nurses that work here. And our old systems aren't able to give you any list. Give me the list of all the educators, the painstaking effort that we have to do that. So they're working on this new HR, it's human capital management system or something like that. That is called big words, and it's going to be done provincially, because what they want to try to do is create similarity. When they were doing that, the opportunity was, what about Learning Hub? Like, we've got this system that's hard to sustain. There are better systems out there. So we are going to be advancing the work around that human capital system with the Learning Hub to create a new space for this, and really to modernize it. And Provincial Nursing and Allied will have oversight around the clinical component to that. So it's not going to be HR driven around the Learning Hub. There's going to be a clinical focus on it, so that we can ensure that the tool is flexible in how we need to use it at each health authority. So there will be definitely modernization, and we're trying to optimize how that current system and the challenges that we have, how we could have it better and more accessible and easier. And it's going to take some time to work through that. And I think, Erin, you have the level of work that we have to do around what's already in Learning Hub, what goes in Learning Hub, who has accessibility to what components within Learning Hub. We're going to be really focused on creating a better system around that, improved efficiency and access, and then also ensuring the quality assurance around the Learning Hub itself. So that is work that we're doing, and it will benefit all of you here within the health authority, but we're doing it provincially, because we don't want to duplicate effort either. So we want to see where there's alignment, where we can have synergy of the work that we're doing. Yeah, so maybe Erin has a little bit more on that, but that is active work.
Thank you, Krista. Can you hear me, everyone? Oh, okay, I did answer the question and nobody heard me. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe I had a mic thing going on. So apologies. Yeah, so just to add to what Krista was sharing, Workday is our new platform. Clicks will look after the moving over of existing course material into our new space. So we don't have to worry, educators won't be put on the hot seat for that. Rebuilds will take place for anything built in Moodle. So Moodle is a no-go moving forward. We've stopped the build in Moodle completely because it will not talk to Workday. Now at a provincial level, we're still looking at, really, can we make some changes in that? It looks like it's not really flexible. So we have put a stop to Moodle builds. And if you are familiar with Moodle builds, that's kind of like the fun way of building a course, right? It has the quizzes in there and everything else. We have to figure out a new way of doing, but we'll take care of all that for you in terms of moving things that are important to you. If that answers that, just to add on to Krista.
Thank you, Erin. And I'm glad we heard you this time. Circling back to Jasmine's question in the chat. There is nothing different that you need to do currently. You continue to use the LMS today as you have been all along. It just means that any new courses that you're looking to develop with support of our team will need to be building in a different program to make sure it'll be compatible in the new space so we don't have to rebuild that as well when we go to move. So stay the course. We'll let you know when things need to change. And we are at time, 3 o'clock on the dot. Thank you all so much for staying for this conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.